So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Clergy Conversations at St. Paul's. And I am delighted to have someone who is very familiar to many, many people at St. Paul's because he is the one that's often standing by the door with a smile, handing out the bulletin as head usher. And I must say, in the last couple of months, when we've been kind of experimenting with services in-person services living in this pandemic. And Stewart has been at every service and helping us at the door with all the extra duties. So somebody said the other day, Stewart, you deserve a medal for what you're doing. So thank you so much for that ministry. And I know it means a lot to people as we move through this very kind of unusual, scary time. And that your presence and that wonderful way of welcoming people, helping people to feel at ease as you're taking their temperature. All of that really matters. So thank you so much. So my first question to you, again, sitting there watching us experimenting and trying to create a safe place for people, what has it been like for you as you have been the greeter at the 9 o'clock outdoor service and and then the services in the main church? Can you give us a kind of insight into because you know what St. Paul's was like before, and now we're doing this strange stuff. What is it been like for you?
It's been a good experience, actually. I have to say that I'm interested in the experimentation. I'm delighted to see that we're doing in-person services, and at the same time, we've continued to do the live broadcast. And I think that's really something that people want. And I'm delighted to see, you know, there's some people who are concerned about their safety and are not quite ready to come in yet. But for those who are coming in person, see the camaraderie, if you will, the esprit de corps, people who are really thrilled to see their friends live. And so that's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying that. And of course, I love seeing everybody in person when they come to the church. And I'm also, as I said, delighted that we're still broadcasting live, because I think it's important for the folks who are not comfortable yet coming in to be able to see what's going on and have a worship experience shared pretty much with those who are there. And so it's been good, and the cooperation. I mean, it's shooting people's temperatures. I thought I'd get maybe some pushback on that, but it's generally speaking, everybody understands what that's about. They understand that we're signaling that this is really important, that we protect everybody's health. And one of the reasons that I've been doing all the services, which I'm happy to do, is so that we have some discipline and some consistency. And I just think until we get everything pretty much the way we want it, we'll make sure that we're following our protocols and keeping
Yeah,
people safe.
right. And for people who may not have come in yet, so you're sitting in the narthex at the just inside the doors. You take their temperature just on their forehead, right, with a little
Right?
gun. We write that down beside their name. People have pre-registered already, so we know who's coming to worship. And it also gives us, if we ever need to contact those people, we have a contact tracing, which is how the
Mhm.
diocese is asked. And then we have Purell, so people can make sure their hands are nice and disinfected. And we use that also before communion. So all of that is good.
And making sure that everybody's masked and distancing.
Everybody's massive discipline, and we've had no bad behavior, right?
No bad behavior.
Yeah, that's good.
Everybody is a lot of goodwill and cooperation, and people appreciate the fact that we're doing it.
Right, and it's for everybody's safety, right? It's
Right,
for
exactly.
everybody's safety. That's great. And so tell me, okay, so you've been ushering for a long time, and that first encounter, especially if people are new, that you are the face of St. Paul's in many ways. So what do you see are some of the qualities of a good usher?
I think the most important thing is diplomacy. Um, when I first came to St. Paul's, which was 30 years ago, uh, my mother and I attended, and we were actually church shopping. And so we'd been to St. Thomas's and we'd been to St. Martin's in the Fields and been to St. Paul's. And during that service at St. Paul's, uh, Charlie Corson, who was a very fine lady, and Harrison Young, a very fine gentleman, separately came to us and welcomed us and, expressed interest in us and invited us to come back the next week. It wasn't too aggressive, but it showed that they were really interested. And so that made a big difference. And I didn't go back to St. Martin's or St. Thomas's because I didn't get that. But I did get it at St. Paul's. And so I think those are important talents. You need to not be too aggressive and yet be very welcoming, and you need to, recognize, well, the big problem too sometimes is that you get somebody who's a longtime member who doesn't come very often, and then you're embarrassed to say, "Are you a new person here?" "No, I've only been here 50 years." Well, it's okay. So try to be a little diplomatic on how you check on whether they're a member or not. But it's important to be diplomatic and to have some sensitivity when you're talking to these people. So and welcome them and encourage them to come back.
That's great.
So actually we did at one point have a fairly aggressive approach. We had greeters as a separate thing from ushers, and they had clipboards. And so when people walked in, they would pounce on them and get all their information. That was the mission. And I think that was too aggressive. If somebody had done that to me, I probably would not be going to St. Paul's. I'd be going somewhere else. So I think it is important to know what you're about, and that is not to be too aggressive and to feel your way. And at the same time, if we have, which we do have, which maybe we need to get out, the information things. So if somebody's new and we've established that they're new, we can say, well, if at your discretion you want to, give us your contact information, maybe the clergy, can reach out to you and so on. That would probably be a good thing to do because we
And
have had a few.
you've seen new people coming
We have.
during the last couple of months, which I think is really exciting.
It is. It is. So I think that's not too aggressive, and they can sort of do that at their discretion. It used to be they would simply put that in with the offering, and that would end up with the clergy, and then there'd be a call made, and that was a good thing.
That's great. Well, we're certainly, Dan and I are following up with, new people who are coming in, and some people, love the music, and other people want to, be involved in outreach and so on. So we're continuing, to do that and to grow the church. So let me ask you another question about, so 30 years is a really long time, deeply committed to St. Paul's. What is it about St. Paul's that kind of feeds your soul and your mind?
It's a beautiful place, and it's a place where we have a lot of really, really nice people, and it's good to worship with these folks, and I feel recharged by coming to church, and I think that that perpetuates me coming to St. Paul's. We have such good people, and I like helping people, and it's sort of a mutual thing. Most people are very helpful to me, and I think that's probably what keeps me coming back. I love the music. I love the preaching. There's a lot to love about St. Paul's.
Yeah, and so we're at one of the highest parts of the city that you have served, Philadelphia. You have served in many capacities in the political life of the city and community commitment to the community. Can you just talk about that? Because the link obviously is here you are on Sundays refreshing your body, mind, and soul to get back into the heart of the city for the hard work that you've done, week in, month in, year in, So tell us about that work that you've been doing and that has been really important in terms of your ministry.
I think that I really wanted to become a legislative attorney just about after I stopped wanting to be a fireman, probably when I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I never wanted to be Perry Mason. I really did want to be sort of a legislative person, somebody who could deal with issues of policy and legislation that would improve the lives of others. And so I'm very dedicated to trying to improve the lives of other people. I've been here for 30 years, but I was in Washington for 12 years before that, and worked for the U.S. Congress, the General Accounting Office there. After 12 years, I kind of wanted to get out of the Beltway, and Philadelphia is where I ended up. I went to, in addition to being an attorney and having my JD from Wake Forest, I then broke and went to William and Mary and got my MBA, and then I went to Harvard and got my master's in public administration. So I was really interested in taking my career, I won't say in a new direction, but sort of in a new direction, and that was, where real people are, not just in the Beltway, and not just national issues where you really can't see folks, but here in Philadelphia, in the municipal level, where you actually can see the people you're helping. And I will say one of the best things that I've done, it's very difficult to be a Republican in a Democratic city. And it's hard, it's gotten harder, I think, in more recent times. But I will say, by way of example, one of my best pieces of legislation was done in cooperation with Mayor Street, who was a Democrat. And he was looking for a policy and legislation solution to gentrification. And people were losing their houses because they were in a gentrifying area. They may have been poor, living there for generations, actually, even 2 or 3 generations. And now all of a sudden, the value of their property has gone up because the surrounding area, the value has gone up. And so their taxes go up with that. And the Pennsylvania Constitution has a uniformity clause which says you can't really do graduated taxes or anything of that sort. So, it was a problem. And so he had 4 proposals in front of him, and mine was the only one that passed muster. And he came to me and said, I think it's a brilliant proposal, and I'm going to get behind you on this. It was nice to kind of have that cooperation between a Democratic mayor and a Republican chief of staff who was writing legislation. And so it was original legislation. I didn't copy anybody else's stuff. And so, just thinking about it, I said, what we really probably should do here to be fair and not violate the state constitution is to defer the additional taxes until such time as the windfall was realized. So somebody could live by paying their old taxes in their house without being forced out. And then, when they died or when they sold their property and realized the windfall, then the deferred taxes would be paid out of that windfall. So there was not a great hardship on the individual. And so that was a result of being able to work across the aisle, basically, with John Street was a very smart guy and was very fair to me and very helpful. And I think that's probably less so these days. I think we've got some big issues, and even before COVID-19, of course. And the city's made a lot of progress on a lot of fronts, but poverty has never ever been resolved. We've never really even made a lot of progress there, although there have been efforts made. And from Rendell to Street to Nutter to Kenny, the effort's been made and not very successful. And I kind of wish now, or at least in my latter part of my career here, that I might have been utilized more by the administrations to to try and help with that. Not that they don't have their experts, but it seems to me the solution to crime and poverty and education is education. And if we're spending $10,000 a student, and Brimore's spending $26,000 a student, well, there's probably a problem here, and maybe we need to change our priorities. And one of my areas of expertise is actually the budget process. And, I know how to squeeze money out of a budget. And I can tell you that if you can't just point to Washington and point to Harrisburg and say they need to give us more money, I think you need to start with a zero budget and work from there. Prioritize, fund the things that really are essential, and then the other things are just not going to get funded. But at least, and part of the problem too in politics is everything's immediate. Nobody wants to wait for the long-term solution. But I guarantee you, we know what to do from an educational standpoint. You hire the best, you have small classes, you do early childhood education, you do longer days, and you do longer years. I mean, the literature's there. And the problem is that all that takes time and money. But if it really matters to us, I guarantee you that will fix a lot of the crime problems and a lot of the poverty problems. And make us a powerhouse.
Yeah. So what's your opinion on charter schools? Because I know, I trained as a teacher, and I'm committed to public education. In some communities, parents are just saying, we can't fix this larger problem you're discussing. So what's been your experience or your views on charter schools?
My views on charter schools, frankly, most of the charter schools in the city of Philadelphia serve the underserved communities, the communities of color, and so on. And at least it gives them a choice. And, I'm not in favor of getting rid of the public school system in favor of the charter schools, but I think it certainly is a competitive force. We don't really want the students to go to the charter schools if those resources are going to deprive other students of a good education. But on the other hand, I favor having them as a recourse, because there are some people who are just not going to get the service that they need in the public schools. And until people want to go to the public schools instead of the charter schools, I think we keep that in there as a competitive element.
Right. Yeah. So, as you're talking, I think about the work of Pat Voigt with the Catholic school system in Philadelphia, and of course, you worked with dear Fred Voigt, who just
Yes.
passed away. What was Fred's legacy to the city? Again, another beloved member of St. Paul's. What would you consider was his greatest gift to the city?
Fred was, if I'm not mistaken, I know it was a very long time. I think he was 28 years with the Committee of 70. And that was a very important role for him to play. He was probably the expert in Philadelphia on election law. And Committee of 70 played a very key role in trying to combat corruption in the election process. And so I think, his expertise was unmatched. And also, when he left Committee of 70, he went to become basically the general counsel for the Philadelphia City Commissioners, who run the election system. And so he helped to maintain the integrity of elections in Philadelphia. And nobody knew more than Fred did, and he was excellent. His expertise was great.
And a great usher.
Yes, he was a
Right.
wonderful usher. He was my buddy for the evensong services. He and I were the team, and he came even if he wasn't feeling well. He came. So remarkably loyal person who loved his orchids and taught me a great deal about orchids too. But among the other things, we discussed politics and orchids.
So talk to me about the current political. You alluded to the days when there was much more cross partisan. Uh, what's your hope, I guess, as we go through a difficult time? I mean, COVID is another kind of layer
Right.
of major concern for our community, and how government and businesses will manage that. But go back to your the kind of change of, because I remember Jerry Brown was talking about when he was
Mhm.
elected as governor, and he said, it's completely changed from when I was governor last time. So all that I knew, I have to kind of put out because it's not that way anymore. So he kind of went in with kind of watching and learning. So what's your analysis and maybe solution?
It's interesting. Back when I was in college, the big complaint was the opposite. The complaint was not that there was polarization, but that there was no difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. Everybody was moderate, and people worked across the aisle, and there was a lot of complaints among professionals in the field, that what we really needed was to have real choices. And now we've got them. We've got people who, have polarized the electorate. And, I think it's most unfortunate. Oh, for the days when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill could, over a beer, work out public policy for the country, for the good of the country. And that kind of across the aisle work just seems to have dissipated. And I think my hope for the future, and I think it will happen, to be honest with you, not just because I'm an optimist, but because I think history shows that we've been through difficult times in the past where you've had polarization. And the pendulum, I hope, will swing back, and we'll find more moderates who can work together. It's really most unfortunate that we can't work together to get things accomplished. It just makes for a more civil society, I think.
Yeah. And what about
But
the role of the faith community? What's your hope for what the faith community can do, say, for Philly or for the country?
I think you know the I think there's certainly a great need for values, and I think the faith community can help to clarify those values. And I'm not talking about Republicans versus Democrats. I'm really talking about um, philosophies that govern who we are as a nation. And I think the church could play a very large role in helping to inform that discussion. And so I would love to see, the church communities, and not just churches, but God is in many places. In mosques and synagogues and all kinds of temples and so on. I'd love to see a dialogue that draws those values into the public sphere. I think a lot of that has kind of gone away, and I think that's an extremely important role to play.
Hmm. Right.
Certainly,
So,
it's been a big thing for me in my life. Uh, you know, I don't think people should be incremental. I don't think people should be making decisions without some reference to um, some anchors of values. And when I was hesitate to go there, but in any case, my father died when I was 6, and my mother raised my brother and I. We prayed together as a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old and my mother, and I've always felt close to God. I felt like my walk was with God. I never had Paul's road to Damascus kind of experience or mountaintop experience or anything like that. I don't think I've lost anything there either, because I feel like my walk is very, very close with God. And I pray every day, and I pray he wrote what it was the Thessalonians about praying unceasingly and thanking God forever and praising God always. And that's been pretty much my approach to things. Not to be Pollyannish, but I really feel like I'm close to God and that I'm being guided by Him. And I think this has been very helpful to me in making decisions in the political sphere. And I would like to see those values play out in our political world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was an early wound for you, and thank God for your mother and raising you and supporting you. That's amazing. So let me move to St. Paul's again. New chapter, moving out of one chapter with the great work that Cliff did and moving into a new chapter. And so, what are your hopes for the new rector, whoever he or she may be?
Well, I have to say that this COVID-19 thing is a big unknown in our existence. But I think we come through this at the end, and I think we'll probably be better for it. I think that we'll be re-examining, just like government has to re-examine what it's doing, because there's going to be problems there with funding government programs. They're going to have to rethink how they do their business. I think we will need to rethink how we do our business as well as a church. And so St. Paul's has been willing to step forward and go to live services and to do the live telecast of the service, to do the godly play broadcasts and so on. I think there's plenty of innovation going on right now, and I think that's probably the gift, if there is one, from COVID-19. I think we need to go forward with a sense of experimentation and beyond COVID-19. I think we'll see, what kinds of things we can do to serve God and serve the community. So
That's great. And full circle again, we've got you're in the middle of that as well. You retired at the perfect time to be able to help us kind of move into this new world of COVID and that stability and that experience we really appreciate. And I really love finding out as we're discussing and with people like Pat and Fred and you, how much St. Paul's has this history of serving the city. And I think that's beautiful.
it
So
is.
yeah,
It is. I have to say that when my mother died, we did the service at St. Paul's, and because of my fairly extensive contacts in the city, a lot of city people came, as they would for Fred. If this all happens after COVID-19, and people came away saying, "I didn't even know this was here." Wow, what a spectacular place this is. And it was a great service. It was certainly a beautiful sanctuary to worship in. And, it's really very interesting to see people from other parts of the city who didn't even know it was here. They know Chestnut Hill, but they didn't necessarily know St. Paul's. And getting them in the door for the funeral, actually kind of worked from that standpoint. And I know people who stopped back, to St. Paul's, who really from other parts of the city, not to become members necessarily, but just because they thought it was a beautiful service and a beautiful place. I think we're certainly very fortunate.
so Stuart, thank you very much for joining us today and for helping us kind of see more of you, because usually when people are coming in and out, but this was a really good way for us to kind of get to know you and what's important to you, what you value about St. Paul's, and what are your hopes for the future for the church and the city. So thank you. we're going to continue. We're going to stay on so that people can ask their own questions and enjoy getting to know Stewart. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.